In the mid-90s, WCW was the hottest wrestling company in the world. They had the NWO storyline, the biggest stars, and the deepest pockets, while Vince McMahon's WWF was on the verge of bankruptcy. But within 3 years, the WCW empire had vanished completely. Most people blame the finger poke of doom or Vince Russo, but the truth is more complex. It wasn't a single night that killed WCW, it was a series of stupid mistakes that could have been easily avoided. And right now, WWE is repeating the same mistakes that led WCW to a graveyard in 2001. From celebrity involvement and backstage politics to over-reliance on older stars and a ring mat covered in corporate logos. History is repeating itself, and these are the mistakes that are slowly killing WWE. The first mistake is perhaps the most obvious and also the most frustrating. WCW in the late 1990s became obsessed with mainstream crossover. And on paper, you understand the logic. Wrestling was hot. Everyone wanted a piece of it. So WCW started opening the door to anyone with a famous face, regardless of whether they had any business being near a wrestling ring. Dennis Rodman and Karl Malone wrestled at Bash at the Beach 1998. Master P and his No Limit Soldiers got a full faction angle. Kiss was paid over $250,000 to appear on Nitro in one of the lowest-rated segments in the show's history, and then you had David Arquette winning the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. Now fast forward to today, and WWE is walking down the same road. The names are different, but the mistakes are identical. At SummerSlam, country music star Jelly Roll was booked into a tag team match alongside Randy Orton, but Jelly Roll is the least of the problems. Pat McAfee was booked into a match against Gunther at Backlash, but they didn't stop there. They inserted him into the Randy and Cody title program for WrestleMania 42 in a completely idiotic booking decision. And let's not forget the Travis Scott debacle at WrestleMania 41. The Wrestling Observer reported a full falling out between Scott and WWE shortly after. He was removed from the WWE video game, and the entire angle just evaporated with zero resolution. Here's the thing that WCW never understood, and that WWE seems to be forgetting all over again. Celebrities work in wrestling when they serve the story, not when it serves shareholders. Mike Tyson's involvement at WrestleMania 14 worked because it fit the story and lent weight to Austin's coronation. It made sense inside the world of wrestling. The moment Arquette won that title, WCW stopped being a wrestling show and became a PR stunt. And the moment Travis Scott pulled up in a WrestleMania main event finish, WWE started flirting with that same line. As Kenny Omega predicted a few years ago, if WWE keeps going down the same path, in a couple of years, the Mania main event will be Logan Paul versus Mr. Beast. But the celebrity appearances are just the tip of the iceberg. This next mistake was fatal for WCW, and WWE is following the blueprint to the last letter. In its final years, WCW became a company that had no idea how to build new stars, so it kept going back to the same well. Hogan kept winning world titles, Roddy Piper kept coming back, Ric Flair never left. Sid Vicious returned, The Ultimate Warrior showed up for a month. The company ignored stars like Chris Jericho, Eddie Guerrero, and Rey Mysterio, and kept relying on old stars and nostalgia. Their logic was simple. If the name drew once, it'll draw again. And that logic killed them. Because nostalgia has an expiration date. You can run it back once, maybe twice if the storyline is smart enough, but if nostalgia becomes your primary source of star power, you're not running a wrestling promotion anymore. You're running a greatest hits tour that will eventually fizzle out. WWE right now is deep into its own version of this problem. John Cena spent 2025 on a retirement tour that lasted the entire year. That's not inherently wrong. Cena is one of the greatest of all time, and giving him a proper send-off is the right thing to do. But instead of using Cena's final appearances to elevate young stars like Braun Breaker, Trick Williams, Obafemi, and building stars for the future, Triple H kept booking him in programs with Logan Paul, Brock Lesnar, and other wrestlers who didn't need that rub. They brought back AJ Lee for a cheap pop. They brought back Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam without any clear direction. The Rock's involvement in the Cena Road storyline and his absence at WrestleMania 41 left a hole in the narrative that a Travis Scott cameo couldn't fill. This is exactly the pattern. When in doubt, reach for a name the crowd already knows. And the worst part of it is what it does to the people who are actually there every week. LA Knight is the most obvious example. For the better part of 2023 and into 2024, Knight was the hottest act in wrestling. Fans were begging he be pushed to the top, and instead of trusting that momentum, WWE gave him a United States Championship run that felt like a consolation prize. By the time any real opportunity came his way, the electricity was gone. Gunther is another case. For nearly 2 years on Raw, Gunther held the Intercontinental Championship in one of the longest and most dominant title reigns in WWE history. Then he moved to the main title picture, got a mediocre reign, lost at WrestleMania 41 to Jey Uso, and his next featured match was against the commentary team. By the time he became the man to retire Cena and AJ Styles, nobody bought into him as a credible threat anymore. When your creative energy is consumed by managing the retirement arcs of 3 or 4 legends, the people who are supposed to be the future end up getting lost in the shuffle. The difference between WWE today and WCW then is that WWE still has the infrastructure to course correct. But the window isn't open forever. Cena is done. Styles is gone. The Rock's role is uncertain. At some point, very soon, WWE will have to build the next generation of stars from scratch. The question is whether Triple H will be bold enough to pull the trigger, or will he cave in to the demands of TKO for another short-term viral reel? Right now, the evidence points more toward the latter. Which brings us to something more subtle, but just as damaging. What happens when a company stops trusting its own product? During WCW's final years under Vince Russo, storylines started and vanished without explanation. Title changes happened on random episodes of Thunder. The line between real and scripted got blurred so aggressively that even the announcers weren't sure what they were supposed to treat as real. Russo put himself on television. He booked actors to win world titles. He stripped every one of their championships on live TV and restarted the company from scratch with zero follow-through. Each week felt like a show produced by a different creative team with no memory of the previous week. As a result, the fans got confused and stopped caring. And when an audience stops caring, no amount of pyro, celebrity appearances, or surprise returns can save you. WWE today isn't operating under Russo-level chaos, but the underlying symptoms are eerily similar. Kayfabe, the sacred agreement between wrestlers and audience that what's happening in the ring is real within its own world, gets punctured constantly now. The same wrestlers who are sworn enemies on Friday Night SmackDown show up laughing together on the same podcast by Saturday afternoon. Social media meta-commentary bleeds into actual storylines. The Unreal Show on Netflix reveals all the behind-the-scenes secrets. None of this is new to the internet age, but the degree to which WWE now leans into this approach has created a product where it's increasingly hard to take anything seriously. WWE keeps teasing feuds and stories only to drop them a week later. But the identity problem runs even deeper than feuds and stories. Ask yourself what WWE is right now, and you'll get a different answer depending on which show you watched last week. One day, you have a celebrity run-in. The next day, Roman Reigns is calling Punk old. The week after that, Jelly Roll is breaking up a brawl between Cody and Randy. The shows have no clear identity, whether they want to be sports-based or if they want to completely lean into the entertainment and drama side. Even the pay-per-views all feel the same. Back in the day, the premium live events each used to have a distinct feel. SummerSlam had that big summer blockbuster energy. Royal Rumble had the electricity of unpredictability. WrestleMania was the grandest stage. Now the calendar is so packed with stadium events and premium live events that nothing feels special anymore. Everything carries the same tone, the same pacing, the same presentation. The last years of WCW were defined by the shows having no consistent identity. One week there were cruiserweights, the next week there were hardcore matches, the next week there was a celebrity angle, the next week there was a worked shoot promo that blurred reality with fiction. The audience couldn't build expectations because the show kept shape-shifting. Every time something gained momentum, the next panic decision would cut it off. There was no patience to sit with an idea and let it develop naturally. WWE under Triple H is more polished, but the same impatience is starting to show. Stories get dropped, heel turns get erased. The biggest moments are rushed to generate a social media reaction rather than generate a lasting emotional connection. But it's not just what's happening on the screen. The backstage politics were equally lethal to WCW's downfall. One of the most repeated lines about WCW's collapse is that the locker room ran the company. Hulk Hogan had creative control written into his contract. Ric Flair was literally booking the show while still wrestling on it. The group of established veterans at the top of the card had more power over the product than anyone in management. They chose their opponents, protected their spots, and made sure the younger generation stayed exactly where they were comfortable keeping them. The result was a company eating itself alive from the inside out. The politics operating inside today's WWE locker room are nowhere near as destructive as they were in late-era WCW, but the cracks are beginning to show. It's no secret that Roman Reigns and Triple H don't get along. It's no secret that Cody and Roman have legit beef about who's the top guy of the company. It's no secret that Triple H has his own favorites, like Rhea Ripley and Sky, who get opportunities after opportunities, and he also has wrestlers he is hesitant to push, like LA Knight and Drew McIntyre. Jade Cargill and Rhea Ripley had a full-blown social media fallout. Wrestlers are constantly exposing the business and taking shots at each other's booking influence and creative decisions for some social media clout instead of respecting kayfabe. And then there's the TKO dimension, which is the part that most closely mirrors WCW's problems. Reports surfaced after WrestleMania 41 that Travis Scott's role in the main event finish wasn't a pure Triple H decision. It was, according to wrestling journalist Stevie Richards, arranged as a personal favor by TKO CEO Ari Emanuel for his friend. WCW had executives above the wrestlers who meddled with the product. WWE now has executives above Triple H who can apparently insert a rapper or a former NFL player into a WrestleMania main event on the basis of a personal relationship. The internal disagreements documented on WWE Unreal revealed a creative team frequently at odds with itself. Disagreements about whether Pat McAfee should beat Gunther, whether Chelsea Green deserved a second U.S. title run, how to handle women's mid-card booking. These are the visible cracks. And Jonathan Coachman, a former WWE employee with direct knowledge of the backstage environment, said publicly that the internal friction shown on that program is a direct reason why the creative team appears out of touch. The difference between WWE and WCW is that WWE's politics are quieter and less obvious compared to guys like Hogan and Flair openly displaying the power in the late 90s. But the core problem is the same. WCW didn't collapse because of one bad actor. It collapsed because the system allowed bad actors to flourish unchecked. The question for WWE is whether their system has enough structure to prevent the same thing from happening. Because everything we've talked about, the celebrity dependence, the nostalgia addiction, the politics, all of it points to the same underlying problem. A company that has stopped trying to invent the future and started cashing in on its past. WCW didn't die because it ran out of ideas. It died because it stopped trusting the ideas it had. The NWO storyline was one of the hottest angles in the history of the business that WWE took inspiration from and formed DX. The evil boss character of Eric Bischoff inspired the Mr. McMahon character. The cruiserweights brought a style of wrestling that American audiences had never seen at that scale. WCW was the innovator. And then, somewhere around 1998, they stopped innovating. Instead of building on what made them great, they started chasing what was making WWE successful with more shock value and crash TV-style booking. They became imitators of the thing they had helped inspire. And in wrestling, when you start following instead of leading, you've already lost. WWE right now is a different kind of position than WCW was. They're not chasing anyone. AEW hasn't posed a serious threat to their dominance since 2022, and the competitive pressure that once forced WWE to be sharper is almost non-existent. And that's precisely the problem. Competition makes companies better. Without it, the incentive to take risks disappears. The incentive to come up with fresh, innovative ideas disappears. Because why try something new when what you're doing is already generating billions? And this creative plateau under Triple H and TKO has been largely pointed out by popular outlets. Sports Illustrated reported in October 2025 that WWE was exploring creative changes after sustained fan criticism. Bleacher Report's analysis in early 2026 identified the issue of lack of follow-up after viral moments. WWE under Triple H has become very good at creating a moment and very bad at building on it. Cena's heel turn at Elimination Chamber, Brock Lesnar's return, R-Truth's transformation into Ron Killings. All of these were huge moments, and then WWE didn't know what to do with him. That's the pattern. A company that knows how to generate electricity but doesn't know how to keep the lights on. WWE right now is the most commercially successful wrestling company in history. The Netflix deal is generational money. The brand is global. None of that is in doubt. But WCW was also making money right up until it wasn't. The ratings were strong right up until they collapsed. The talent was elite right up until it walked out the door. WWE isn't WCW, but it's writing some of the same pages. And if no one inside that company is paying attention to history, the end might be near.